Welcome to an explainer that is absolutely going to change how you look at global security. Today, we're unpacking a massive paradigm shift, a concept that has completely rewritten the rulebook for every major power on Earth. We're talking about unrestricted warfare. Okay, imagine waking up tomorrow to a totally normal morning, but suddenly there's an inexplicable, cascading collapse of your city's power grid. Traffic lights go completely dark, hospitals are scrambling on failing backups, and your cell service? It's just gone.
Then it gets worse. Within minutes, your bank accounts freeze up, digital transactions are completely blocked, and global stock markets mysteriously crash, wiping out billions in value before anyone can even figure out what's going on.
Next, your social media feeds absolutely explode. You're bombarded with conflicting emergency alerts, panic-inducing rumors, and these incredibly realistic deepfakes of national leaders. Total information chaos takes over. At this point, it's basically impossible to tell what's real and what's a weapon.
So, what does this all mean? The crucial takeaway from this chilling scenario is that the illusion of peace can shatter without a single shot ever being fired. Zero enemy soldiers crossing a border, modern conflict might actually begin and be entirely decided without a visible battlefield. Which brings us to Section 1, Decoding Unrestricted Warfare, the Paradigm Shift. India's Defense Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, recently hit the nail on the head regarding our current era of global uncertainty. He pointed out that unconventional tools of warfare pose a massive challenge today. We're witnessing dynamic shifts in global relations, where tools like AI, cyber, and space warfare are front and center in state strategy.
Now, the root of this massive shift actually traces back to a 1999 book by two Chinese military strategists, and it proposed something radical: unrestricted warfare. It's exactly what it sounds like. It throws out the conventional rules of engagement entirely. It argues that absolutely all means, both military and non-military, should be merged to achieve strategic goals. We're not just talking about a military doctrine here, it's a playbook where everyday things like trade, media, and technology become fully weaponized.
We are rapidly moving away from the traditional battlefield, tanks, troops, physical trenches. Now we're operating in a virtually infinite zone. The new front lines span the cyber realm, artificial intelligence, the electromagnetic spectrum, space, and the global economy.
Let's break this down further in Section 2, Weapons of the New Age, Mapping the Arsenal. To really wrap our heads around the cyber domain, let's look back at the 2007 Estonia attacks. What started as a localized political dispute over a Soviet-era monument quickly spiraled into a massive distributed denial-of-service attack. This was an invisible assault that completely paralyzed the nation's government websites, their media, and their banking infrastructure. It was a huge wake-up call, proving you absolutely do not need bombs to cripple a nation's infrastructure.
Economic tools are equally devastating. They are primary weapons now. Take technology restrictions. Back in 2018, the US sanctioned Huawei, using tech access as a giant geopolitical lever. Or consider weaponized supply chains. China's dominance in rare earth minerals allows them to exert intense political pressure worldwide. And tariffs? Massive U.S. tariff wars are deployed strategically to specifically strain an opponent's economic growth. It's all incredibly calculated.
Furthermore, adversaries are aggressively manipulating the information space and international law to exploit a target nation's internal divisions. For example, state-backed accounts linked to the Chinese government were flagged for targeting the U.S. 2022 midterm elections. We also saw this play out with COVID-19 mask diplomacy running right alongside massive disinformation campaigns. And then there's lawfare, which is tactically exploiting another country's legal and institutional weaknesses to score strategic wins.
Moving on to Section 3, the Gray Zone Tactics, Deconstructing Proxy Wars.
When we compare direct, open combat to these gray zone tactics, we're really looking at a masterclass in ambiguity. Just look at Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea, using proxy forces to shape the environment before any direct confrontation happened. Or look at the South China Sea, where actors employ wolf warrior diplomacy, debt traps, and calculated military positioning. The whole goal is to assert dominance and subdue the opponent without ever crossing the line into a fully declared war.
This brings us to the actual mechanics of proxy warfare, which systematically operates through three highly effective steps. Step 1, plausible deniability, so a state can evade direct blame. Step 2, strategic depth, giving them remote influence via sleeper cells and non-state actors. And Step 3,
cost avoidance. Historically, we've seen Pakistan utilize proxy warfare against India, funding militant groups to execute a low-cost, thousand-cut strategy. The objective is to inflict massive security costs on India while keeping their own direct casualties near zero.
But we're also seeing asymmetric warfare reach alarming new heights. Look at Israel's recent operations in West Asia, using highly sophisticated cyber attacks to instantly disrupt adversaries' electronic devices and command structures way before a main offensive even starts. And perhaps most chillingly, defense think tanks are warning about the potential for biological or chemical warfare reservoirs. These are weapons that could completely bypass traditional socioeconomic penetration entirely, causing an immediate systemic shock to a society.
So, how do nations survive this? Section 4. Crossing Strategic Boundaries. The Future Response.
First, we have to fully acknowledge the massive, systemic impact of this unrestricted format. It is a direct, undeniable challenge to a nation's sovereignty. It leads to real violence and the loss of life, both civilian and military, through indirect, proxy insurgencies. And it creates absolutely crushing economic burdens, forcing countries to pour vast resources into internal security while simultaneously fighting off hostile trade tariffs.
In response, global powers are completely forging new defenses. The U.S. is going all in on multi-domain operations, or MDO, realizing defense has to span every single domain. Meanwhile, India has rolled out a three-pillared security doctrine which essentially treats these proxy attacks as direct acts of war. They're also heavily modernizing borders with comprehensive integrated border management systems. Think smart fencing and thermal imaging, all while rapidly boosting their cybersecurity infrastructure through agencies like CERT and NTRO.
All of these separate pieces build into a comprehensive, systems-based approach. The core doctrine here is simple. It takes a network to defeat a network. Governments literally have to decentralize their network authorities to respond faster. They need to partner with academia for deep cultural expertise to counter ideological proxy movements from the inside out. And it absolutely requires massive, ongoing investment in niche tech like AI, space, and electronic warfare.
This all leads us to an inescapable truth about the modern era of conflict. As the quote perfectly puts it, when conflict crosses boundaries, preparedness must also cross boundaries. The old, neat divisions between peace and war, they've vanished. So, as we watch the lines between peace and war completely blur into this crazy hybrid mix of digital networks, economic pressure, and psychological manipulation, we're left with one absolutely critical question to ponder. Is your nation ready for the invisible battlefield? Are we truly prepared for a war we cannot see? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.